Okay. Hi, Jack.
Hi, Rain.
Welcome to my little show, Let's Exchange. I'm so glad you could take the time to be with me today.
I'm thrilled to be here with you, and it's my spring break, so even better.
Spring break! Woo! A whole year of this bananasness.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. What is a break even?
yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, wait, you weren't in your graduate program last spring break, or you were?
I was not.
Okay.
I had started taking like community college classes to get ready for my social work master's program, but I wasn't in it yet.
Yet another punk rocker gone to the academy. Nobody ever talks about the punk rock to the academy pipeline.
It really is, and the like, it's parallel to the queer to social worker pipeline. I'm going to be the second person in my bands to be a social worker.
Nice, 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 nice. So, what's been going on in your pandemic world? What have you been up to? You do so many things as it is, as an artist, as a musician. So, I would love to hear what you've got going on these days.
Yeah. So most recently, although I guess I can say this, kind of throughout the pandemic, my band Manners has been in pretty close touch with each other. We meet once a week on Zoom. Last year, we got a chance to play outside in a pavilion far away from people, and that was like the only practice we got last year, really. So we recorded some tracks right before things locked down, and we've just been sending them back and forth to each other, adding vocals, adding parts, writing new songs that way too, which is really cool. Um, and then we just like polished up one track that we're gonna release hopefully in a month or two. So we're
Awesome.
we're recording and we're working on stuff. I haven't done any of the kind of like sitting down with my guitar and like writing a song right there kind of songwriting.
Hmm. Yeah, I've missed that a lot. I don't know when the next song is going to come.
You'd think that we'd have like more time to do that,
Yeah,
and yet like I feel like I've never had less time to do like that kind of songwriting.
right, 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 right. Well, and I don't know what your songwriting process is like exactly, but like, I can like get a notion, or like a phrase or something along those lines. Um, but that doesn't mean it'll go anywhere. Sometimes it doesn't go anywhere for years, decades even. Um, but like that, I've been really jonesing for that feeling of like, oh, I've got an idea and I'm going to run through it. And by the time this time tomorrow, I'm going to have a complete song, where it just kind of falls out of you almost. Ugh.
How many times has that happened to you? Like a song finished in 24 hours?
A few, enough that it's like a dragon I want to chase.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
same,
Um,
same.
they're not always like stellar, you know, but it's just like you get this, you can get this idea and like, whatever that narrative is that drives that song that like locks it all together, sometimes if you can just get it all done in one sitting and then like flesh it out, with all the stuff that you need to really make a song, but like, you know, um, God, I don't even remember the last time that it's happened because it's been a little while.
Yeah, it has for me too. I'm almost wondering if First in Line was the last song I wrote like that,
Mm.
which is a long time ago now.
Let's talk about First in Line because
Oh,
not
sure.
only is it about Joe Bryant, who's just over your shoulder there, you had a little cool thing happen with First in Line this past,
Oh,
right?
yeah, I did. And well, really for my band. Jay Robbins, producer, engineer, frontman of Jawbox and many other bands, who has worked with Manners before. He engineered our EP that we released called First in Line. He covered our song. He covered First in Line. Uh, Absolutely crazy that that happens. Uh,
Good.
I yeah, it's one of the absolutely like the greatest uh thrills and like highest points of my time in life making music.
It's a beautiful thing when that happens. As if it's happened to him a million times. But no, I think it's such a gorgeous, and it's a gorgeous rendition of it. I mean, we've already talked about this, but I would love to like let the people know. Tell me about this song and what it is and what it means to you.
Oh boy, of course. So First in Line is about, well, it's funny to describe a song without having them hear it, but maybe I'll play it. So First in Line is sort of the tale of the perils of being the first at something, the perils of being groundbreaker. I mean, a literal groundbreaker. So in the song, in the first verse, I won't play throughout. I'm juxtaposing these two scenes. And the first scene is uh, sled dogs in Antarctica going across, wide wastes of ice. And when they would do this, like especially in like the 1800s and the early part of the last century, they would line up their sort of like dog teams, like bam, 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 and they would put the first team would be carrying like the least important uh what they judged to be least important cargo, so like certain kinds of food or clothing, I don't know, whatever, but also like the less senior members of the expedition. uh and so the reason they did that was because that was the crew of sled dogs that would find fissures in the ice and fall through,
Hmm.
and really just kind of literally be dead, lost to history. People don't really know that this happened. And juxtaposing that with the scene of someone like Jabriath, who was uh, the first openly, flamingly gay songwriter signed to a major label in the 1970s, um, who the world was really promised to him. This was like on the heels of David Bowie's introduction to American music audiences, and the world was like, it seemed like the world was going to be primed for Jabriath and like ready, like we had like reached the sexual revolution. Glam rock was cool, everyone loved it, and yet Jabriath shows up. He's not teasing about being gay. He really is. There's no question. There's no question when you listen to Jabriath's music. Um, and it didn't go over well. And his career tanked despite making two beautiful records. Um, and he ended up living in the Chelsea Hotel for the rest of his days and doing, piano bar kind of stuff. And he died of AIDS in 1984. Um, and such like an unappreciated loss to history kind of artist. Uh, as a trans person, as a queer musician, that story always resonates with me, because we hear sort of the cries from especially the right about like the culture wars,
Hmm.
and like everyone's queer, it's hip, and like, okay, yes, here I am. It's not easy, like being the first at something and being the groundbreaker. That's where people get lost, that's where people get hurt.
Yeah.
um, and then the other thing is that you and I have talked about this many times, about how the curse of the queer artist is that you think you're always the first to do things, so it was a little nod to that too.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. Like, I feel like we're definitely in a mode now with, especially I think driven with social media and self promotion, where yeah, it's great to say that you're the first at something, and but I'm always suspect when I see that as the claim. I'm like, well, number one, good. I'm glad that this advance seems to be happening, but you're probably not the first to do that. You're just maybe the first one that's able to like say that you are. And that's great. That's really, really great. But like, I feel like I've lost the desire to know who the first is, to do things if they're a contemporary right now, you know. Um, maybe a little bit of a broad claim on my part. I'm going to think about that, But like by and large, I'm like, well, what is the value of being the first here? Like mostly, in my experience, the people that are first do suffer, and they are forgotten, and uh, you know, nobody really should want to be the first to do a thing. In a
And
lot,
I could be confident that I'm not,
yeah,
and what a privilege to not be
yeah, yeah,
first.
absolutely. And I also think sometimes, like, it definitely overlooks like the second and the seventh and the ninth person to do X, Y, or Z, who are arguably, refining that process, improving on it, making it more uh, democratized and accessible and these sorts of things. I mean, yeah, 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 yeah. But at the same time, like, you got to give it up for somebody like Joe Bryant, who just didn't get to enjoy all the benefits while he was still alive of, doing these things, breaking that ground.
Yeah, literally.
Exactly. Well, that's exciting. We'll have to make sure that people hear more about that. So, do you have any plans to put out any music this year?
Yes. So we'll be releasing our single for Dia Session now. We don't have a date for it yet, but it'll be in the next month or two.
Hmm. That's
And
exciting.
then yeah, and then after that, I mean, more stuff is in the pipes. We're still mixing, we're still recording. We were
Yeah.
hoping to do a kind of a series of singles and then perhaps release them together with additional stuff. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. I feel like that's the way to go these days. Like, I really, we're all figuring out how to put music out in the world, but I feel like just putting an album out doesn't work so much anymore. You gotta do singles.
It's
Feed that.
wildly expensive to do an album
It is.
too, and I mean, I don't think anyone's released a physical album of any type in the past year. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Like, I really can't.
Yeah.
But I miss buying albums from people at shows. Having like a physical thing was
Yeah.
like an excuse to talk to the band. It like they're like significant objects in the way we relate to each other as musicians.
Yeah. That's really one of the most that's probably the way I bought most physical product in the last decade or so is what face to face at shows. I'm doing a little bit on Bandcamp, here and there, but by and large, I'm not, unless it's vinyl and I'm making an evening of it, I'm not listening to physical media the way that I used to at all. I mean, this is not news to anybody who listens to music, I think, anymore. Um,
Shocked, Rain.
yeah,
Shocked.
right. Um, but one thing I have been doing for this is, Bandcamp has been doing the Bandcamp Fridays thing where, they'll give they won't take their cut off of those sales on those days. So I've been loading up my Bandcamp cart throughout the month, you know, then I push
Nice.
play on Bandcamp Friday, which makes me really happy because then I'm like, I've done my shopping incrementally throughout the month, which
That's the way to do it.
I
I
like
had never thought of it
strategy.
that way before.
Of course, being in grad school, I haven't had time to listen to any of it.
Right.
Like it's all, I'll get around to it. Like this summer is going to be all this amazing new music that's come out this last year. Very excited about that. And maybe it'll include the session now.
Hopefully.
Yes.
So.
Well, one thing that I've always loved about your songwriting is so much of it is research based. if I may be so bold as to call
Yeah, thank you. I'm
it.
very flattered to have my song getting called research based.
But it's real. I mean, you know, you situate things historically, which I think is, you know, I think it's an important thing to do as queer people, as trans people, as artists, you know, to really like be conscious of like this history that has preceded us and where we're going. So yeah, your sled dog story, and your song about monuments is very much very much on my mind as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Oh man. Yeah, so Monument is another Manners Manners song. It came out on our EP, First in Line.
Mhm.
So that was a song that we wrote the year that Baltimore City made the absolutely correct decision, correct but also like very late decision to remove. Was I don't know if it was all of the Confederate monuments in the city.
Mhm. All four of them in one night.
Yeah, um,
Best thing
which was
Catherine Pugh did.
what's that?
That was the best thing Catherine Pugh did.
Yes, no question. I can't, there's no question about that. Um, and just obviously people had a meltdown about it. There was a time in my early 20s when I was working as a tour guide on the historic ships in the harbor, which was a very strange and funny job for someone like me to have. Um, and you know, a lot of my coworkers there were like full on Civil War reenactors for the South.
Mhm.
Uh, uh, and that was rough. So I wrote this song about some coworkers of mine there. Um, but I'm, you know, the sort of like angle of this song is actually sort of in indicting uh queer complicity in white supremacy.
Mhm.
Um, and you know, like how it's so easy, you know, like you see so many examples of, you know, gay men fetishizing cops, gay men fetishizing military,
Mhm.
general fascist
I mean, the toll.
aesthetics in general. So I'm coupling some things together in there, and I'm so proud of that song and its weird tuning,
Yeah,
and how fun it is to play live.
it's such a good one. It's such a good one. Are you working on any material, or maybe this is a two-pronged question. Are you working on any new song ideas? And or are there any historical situations that you're really wanting to write a song about that you haven't really nailed down yet?
Mm. So I'm not in a lyric place right now, so I don't have anything for, you know, like what I've been working on. I Manners Manners is working on a lot of bits and bobs of different songs, but I can't really get into thematic content. But in terms of historical stuff, God, I wish I could remember his name, but I'm very I really enjoy the Making Gay History podcast.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm thinking about a specific gay porn theater in San Francisco, and the history of it and how it became sort of the resting place of the Mattachine Society. I'm really interested in sort of the evolution of queer activism and organizing, and you know the Mattachine Society was like partly founded by Harry Hay, who went on to found the Radical Fairies. Like he like knew he was more radical than the Mattachine Society all along. Um, but then the Mattachine Society, which for people who aren't aware of what the Mattachine Society is, was, I mean, I think the earliest queer or you know gay men's activism group. They were one of the first groups to sort of like recognize gay men as like a marginalized
Mm.
group and advocate for their own rights on those terms. Um, and when they kind of splintered with the Radical Fairies in, I believe, the 60s.
Somewhere there, mid
What's
six,
that?
somewhere in there, mid '60s.
Yeah. The Mattachine Society kind of became known as like the more respectable group. They wanted to sort of give the message to the world that, gay people are just like straight people. There was no, like, it wasn't radical. It was
Yeah,
about
respectability
conformity.
politics.
Um, but fascinatingly, um, the last person who was like the president of the Mattachine Society, um, ended up running a porn theater in San Francisco, uh, and it was called the Cinematachine, and they had like gay newsreels between the porn,
Oh my God.
where they would show like community events and like political news. I am dying to see these newsreels.
Yeah,
So that's, I don't know. It's like a weird little slice of life. Like I'd love to write a song about like what it's like to experience like this sort of like secret sensual place, but also like the community, um, and being like in this exact pocket of history. I think is it's really interesting. I'd love to write a song about that.
I want to hear that song so much, so much. Because yeah, I mean, I feel like unless we repeat these histories, they really get lost very quickly. Like very, like it's kind of terrifying how quickly, which I think feeds into like what we were talking about with like the first to do things, and like we kind of roll over ourselves in pursuit of our own progress. I think in a lot of ways. Um, uh, I mean, I'm thinking of for my thesis, one of the chapters talks about uh, trans women artists and like how many of us like we get close to success or we've gotten close to success and then like the bottom drops out somehow and then we kind of don't quite make it. And now we're starting to see people like get there and stay, so we've got
Mhm.
Laverne Cox who's like solidifying a base, or Zachary Drucker who's solidifying a base, which is awesome. But there's a lot that just haven't. And I mean that's just like trans women. Like there's so many other categories
Oh
of
yeah.
us that like, I mean, whatever. It's like the poltergeist house in a lot of ways. I feel like your community is a little like the poltergeist house. Work with me on this one. Like the house is there, but it's really haunted,
Hmm.
you know,
Damn. Yeah.
really haunted. Maybe I'm working on a song of my own.
Yeah. The house is there, but it's really haunted. If you have Ghost Train.
Yes, yes, yes. So why don't we talk a little bit about, so I mentioned my thesis, and I've got a couple of different angles that I'm looking at. Healthcare being a huge component of what's on my mind, and ability, disability, and these sorts of things. I know that you're going into social work kind of program. You're dealing with healthcare in day-to-day basis now in the midst of a pandemic. Is this impacting you artistically, do you feel like?
It is, and as much as I don't have time to play music as much as I would like, um, I don't know that it's really made its mark on me musically yet. But I also feel like my songwriting is on a little bit of a lag, and you and I have talked about this too. How like you haven't even started writing about life in Baltimore yet, uh, and you've been here for 20 years.
Almost.
Yeah. So I'm sure these perspectives will start to find their way into my songwriting like 5 years from now. um it's not there yet, but I can't imagine how it wouldn't find its way into
Yeah.
my work.
Yeah. Are there things that have surprised you as you've gone through as you started your program? Uh, and just in the ways that the pandemic is impacting that?
Mm. The answer is yes. Let me collect thoughts about how.
We can also leave that one aside if you want to. You could choose to demur that question.
Wait, ask the question again.
Um, Maybe I can rephrase. Are you um, so you're in a program now, which is a social work sort of program dealing
Mhm.
directly with healthcare outcomes. I'm assuming mostly around like mental emotional health is primarily where you're focused.
Actually, no. I am doing my well, I mean, at least this year, I'm doing my internship for my MSW program at Chase Brexton in the case management department. So I'm not necessarily doing therapy or behavioral health. I'm doing case management. Um, but I just recalled part of your question, which was what has surprised me.
Yeah.
Um, and the thing that I think has sobered me the very most about this experience working in case management for healthcare, specifically for HIV positive people,
Mm.
um, has been just how impactful, uh, just how dangerous um, our assumptions about people can be, like in like literally deadly. And the labels that we give people have profound effects upon their lives. I'm thinking about a situation that happened recently where someone came to the department and said that they wouldn't be admitted to the hospital because the admitting person had labeled them a frequent flyer uh, and a malingerer when they were having like severe back pain. Like it turned out they had like a severe spinal infection,
Oh my.
uh, and most healthcare facilities, most places that deal with the public on a regular basis, like, use this kind of language of like frequent flyer, malingerer, like all kinds of really like shitty, unfair, harmful things to say about people, and those labels keep people from getting life-saving services.
Yeah.
It's been extremely sobering to see how frequently that happens.
Yeah. And I would imagine that once something like that is entered into your chart, it just that malingers a little bit, I would
Oh
imagine.
yeah, for sure.
I know, I mean, I definitely see those things popping up, um, even in my own charts where I'm just like, well, I'm still, whatever. I'm still being listed as, I don't know, allergic or, I don't know, just the like pretty mundane sorts of things overall.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, yeah, that's unfortunate. And I think probably exacerbated by sharing data. Like,
Yes, certainly. I
right,
mean, in
right,
this
and all
in
that.
this case, I think it was alleviated by sharing data because the conversation was sort of facilitated between like myself and like this person's doctor at the place I work and like the hospital. Like it technology actually managed to come in handy in this particular scenario. But you're absolutely right. When anyone can see when anyone within a medical institution can see the kinds of notes that a person with like a severe bias
Mhm.
writes, it totally affects the care they're going to receive downstream.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, I mean, I'm thinking of a situation that happened to me personally earlier this year, which is just, again, like I'm in a position of enough privilege to be like, well, this is actually just like a minor annoyance in the grand scheme. But like when a service provider isn't really providing the right service and they're screwing things up because of something in that system, you know, I had to like kind of go back with the full force of my personality and kind of do a HIPAA violation of myself to be like, look, I'm going to take some screenshots and show you why this is a problem. But
Yeah,
like, even with this kind of force and all these resources and things, I feel like it's still really hard to like fight back against these systems that on one hand seem to have our best interests, but ultimately they don't always serve them.
yeah.
It's a challenge. It's a real challenge. Um, well, are we, is there anything else that you want to talk about that we haven't talked about yet?
Uh, I don't know. I can't say I have much else to announce
Hmm.
other than I'm so glad that I'm vaccinated now. I'm so glad that it's crazy to look at the like COVID chart and just see like there was that peak at the beginning of January, and now it's like on the downslope, and then you like actually and you're like, oh wow, great, and then you like zoom in even further and see that like the numbers we're still in are like 900 new cases a day. So in like to wrap up, like I'm enthusiastic and also like I'm trying to hold in there.
Yeah, yeah,
Hang on in there because I want to hug everyone and I miss
I know.
everyone so much.
I know. You're a very tactile person. I'm a
No
very,
hugger. Yeah.
I feel like this, like, I feel like the wire monkey. I feel like this has been the year of the wire monkey where you can't hug your mom or whatever, right?
What is this wire monkey?
Oh, so it's a kind of a classic behavior study from, the questionable ethics 20th century, where
Sure.
they had these, I forget the name of the researcher that took responsibility for this, but had all these like infant monkeys and would like created like this wire mesh mother figure and
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yes.
and so like they were like, oh, so these are they're basically trying to test like uh what happens when you're like devoid of touch,
Hmm.
especially when you're an infant and you need a mother or whatever. And of course they were like, oh, let's just try this out on monkeys because like who gives a fuck, right?
Sure.
Um, and so, I mean, I remember studying this in my undergrad and just being like devastated by these photos of these poor little baby monkeys that were trying to get affection from, a wire cage covered in a pelt, you know, and
That's really upsetting.
this
Wow.
fear that they were feeling.
I'm sorry I asked.
No, I mean, but this is real. I think this is one of
Yeah.
the things that we're in the midst of right now is that,
Oh God. Yeah.
obviously not everybody's a hugger. And, we want to acknowledge that, like, don't touch people that don't want to be touched, but also like
Absolutely.
I feel very touch starved. I feel lucky to have a partner that I live with, obviously, but you know, I want to hug my friends. I want to smell my friends. I want to smell my friends' fragrances, their clothes, the tactile things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to smell the like musky sweatiness of like Autobar backstage.
I want to just, when was your last show before?
Um, there was a show that I think Santa Labrada played with the Selkies at the Autobar, and I'm not officially a member of the Selkies, but I
You did.
sometimes play guitar and sing with them. So I was performing at that show, and then Manners played um, like a house party uh, shortly before that. So
Yeah. And streaming's just not the same.
it really isn't. It really isn't. I mean, we can't say we didn't try. We all tried to do it for a while, and it just didn't catch on.
It's just not the same, not for what you do, not for what I tend to do. I mean, I think one of the things that I've been really dealing with is I've had it as basically part of my artistic mission for 20 years to be a trans body in a room full of whoever happens to show up.
Hmm.
So I'm not always like, I'm not that mission driven to like only play to trans audiences or only play to queer audiences, because I really I want to be able to give my full personality, and then everybody just has to deal with it. And like that's my activism in so many ways. So it's like a little
I love
Mattachine,
that about you.
a little bit of radical fairy, but like, so maybe we can call it irrespectability politics. I'm not sure.
I love it.
But like that's been the whole point. Like I'll get a rock band and I'll go places and they have to deal. And I'm at risk
Yeah,
for sure.
right, right.
But you make shifts there. Have you in your career so far, um, have you like met any specific challenges around just like that, those kinds of identity problems on stage? Have you felt that? Because I feel like you've done pretty well in terms of like connection with, like across lots of different categories of people and musicians and audiences.
Yeah, I've been really lucky. I in my earliest days, things were weird. It was not the scene that it is now. I in some ways I got in my own way because I did feel at times like I only wanted to play to queer audiences. And then even earlier than that, in my most self-hating days, I didn't want to play to queer audiences at all. Um, and my life is so much richer, and my performances are so much funner when it's for everyone, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And you really nail that thing where you can get people kind of singing along,
Ah,
right? You're
yeah.
like, you're with, they're with you, but then they're like, maybe they're later going like, wait a minute, this is like a deeply, deeply song that I'm singing. And I had no idea.
Yeah, it sounds like what I just said means that I'm willing to put up with some hetero bullshit, and the answer, that's not true at all. I'm not willing to put up with any hetero bullshit. And I feel very strongly that cis and hetero people who come to my performances, like, I'm not there to I'm gonna try to say it nicer.
Just say it.
I need them to come to my level. I need, like, this is, and that's kind of the beauty of being a performer. Like, I set the standard, I set the tone. Like, you and I do that when we perform. Like, if you're not gonna respect trans people, this is not the space for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go literally anywhere else
Yeah.
on
Please,
the planet. Yeah.
for the quickness. Oh, Jack, this has been so fun just hanging out and chit chatting. Thank you for being on my show.
Ah,
This is
thank you for
great.
having me.